Hello, let's read Gulliver's Travels. My name was Lemuel Gulliver. I was born in England in a small town near Nottingham. When I was a boy, I was curious about the world. I liked to read books about travel and exploration. When I grew up, I studied medicine and became a doctor. But I didn't want to stay in one place all my life. I wanted to see other countries and meet new people. After I finished my studies, I began to work as a ship's doctor. Life at sea was not easy, but I enjoyed it. I saw many ports and heard many languages. I met sailors, traders, and captains. I also learned about the weather, the stars, and the sea. In May 1699, I started another journey. I left my wife, Mary, and my children in England. I promised to come back soon. The ship's name was the Antelope, and we sailed from Bristol. The captain was a serious man, but fair, and the crew respected him. There were about 30 of us on board. For the first few weeks, the voyage went well. The wind was good and the sea was calm. Every morning, the sailors were cleaning the deck or fixing ropes. I often stood at the rail, watching the wide blue ocean. Sometimes dolphins swam near the ship, jumping in and out of the waves. The men laughed and pointed at them. I wrote notes in my journal and felt peaceful. But one evening the weather started to change. The wind became stronger and the sky turned dark. Thick clouds covered the sun. Soon the waves were rising higher and higher. The captain ordered the sails to be taken down. The men were running, shouting, and pulling ropes. The air smelled of salt and danger. By night the storm had begun. The wind was howling like a wild animal. The rain was heavy, and the sea was roaring. Water came over the sides of the ship again and again. I held the ropes tightly so that I wouldn't fall. The ship was moving up and down, left and right. The sailors were shouting to each other, but the sound of the storm was louder than their voices. The captain stood near the wheel, his face white and wet. "Hold on, man," he shouted. "Don't give up." But it was useless. The waves were too strong. The ship was breaking apart. All night we fought the storm. We were cold, tired, and afraid. The sky was black, and lightning flashed over the water. When the light came, I saw the terrified faces of my friends. Some men were praying, others were crying. I tried to help where I could, but I was not strong enough. Then, just after midnight, a huge wave crashed onto the deck. I fell hard and felt the water pulling me away. I heard the captain's voice shouting, "Abandon ship!" That was the last thing I heard from him. I was in the sea, fighting to breathe. The water was freezing. I tried to swim, but the waves pushed me down again and again. My clothes were heavy, and my eyes burned from the salt. I shouted for help, but nobody answered. The ship disappeared into the darkness. I didn't know how long I was swimming. Maybe it was an hour, maybe more. I only remembered that I wanted to leave. I saw nothing but black water around me. Then, far away, I thought I saw something like a line, maybe land, maybe just another wave. I swam toward it, slowly, one arm after another. My body was shaking and my heart was beating fast. When I finally touched the sand, I almost cried. I crawled out of the water and lay on the beach. I couldn't move. My arms and legs were shaking. The rain was still falling, but I didn't care. I was alive. I closed my eyes and fell asleep immediately. When I woke up, it was morning. The sun was shining and the sea was quiet. I tried to stand up, but something was wrong. I couldn't move my arms or legs. I looked down and saw that my body was tied to the ground with hundreds of tiny ropes. My hair was also fastened. I could only move my head a little. I didn't understand what was happening. I turned my eyes to the side and saw something small moving on the sand. Then I realized that it was a man, but he was not bigger than my hand. He was walking carefully on my chest. He wore a red coat and carried a tiny sword. Around him, I saw more of these little people. They were climbing up and down my body with ladders and ropes. I was too surprised to speak. I could see about 100 of them. They were shouting to each other in a strange language. Their voices were high and quick. Some were pointing their weapons at me. I wanted to show that I wasn't dangerous, but when I moved a little, I felt sudden pain in my arm. Dozens of tiny arrows hit me. They were not strong enough to hurt me badly, but I felt them like needles. I stopped moving at once. I didn't want to frighten them. After some time, the man in red climbed closer to my face. He looked at me with curiosity, but he wasn't afraid. He spoke again in that strange language, pointing at me and then at the sky. I couldn't understand, but I nodded slowly to show that I was pissed. Then I heard music, small drums and trumpets. More of the tiny people came, carrying food and drink. They placed it near my mouth, little baskets of bread, meat, and fruit. I was very hungry, so I ate carefully. The food was small but delicious. The tiny people seemed pleased when they saw me eating. After I finished, I tried to speak to them. Thank you, I said, but they didn't understand my words. They looked at each other and smiled. Then the man in red shouted something, and about 100 men began to cut the ropes around my head. Slowly, I could turn it to one side. The sun was high now. The beach was bright and the little people were everywhere, maybe 1,000 or more. I could see their houses far away, small as toy buildings. It all felt like a dream. The man in red looked at me again and made a sign that I should stay still. Then he walked away with his soldiers. I heard him giving orders. Soon I felt a strange, sweet smell in the air. I became sleepy. Perhaps they put something on my face to make me calm. My eyes were closing. I wanted to stay awake, but I couldn't. When I finally fell asleep again, I was surrounded by hundreds of tiny people, all watching the giant who had come from the sea.